Hi guys, welcome back. My name is Valerie Morris and this is Bright Violet Arts. I am setting up my bullet journal today for the month of July 2023 and I totally love the theme that I went with. It was so much fun to illustrate all the pages. I went with a cherries theme and it was just perfect because it was like bright and sweet and summery. And I am so excited to share all my painting techniques and the spreads that I used for organizing my life with you guys in this video. Getting started, I'm going to activate my watercolor palette with a spritz of water, and then I'm going to mix up a warm golden brown color. What I need this for is the pastry or the pie shell of a cherry berry pie that I'm going to paint for the cover illustration. And this is kind of like an American patriotic pie. It's like stars and stripes over the top of a cherry pie filling, and then toward the left of the pie there's a section that has blueberry filling. So I'm going to see how I can represent that in watercolor, and like I said, I'm starting out with that warm golden brown for the pastry, but I want it to look as realistic as I can get it. So I've gone in, this is now my third layer of the golden brown color, and each layer is a little bit darker of a color than the layer before, if that makes sense. To paint the pie filling, I have drawn some circles in between the pastry stripes there, and I'm just going to paint them in a flat red color for the base layer, and I'm doing the same thing for the blueberries, although I did use two different colors of blue for the base layer just to give a little variation on the blueberries, but I'm going to treat them the same way. So what I'm doing now is I am putting a darker red color on the left side of all my cherries. And this is because I want to show that the illustration is being lit from the right hand side. So that means the shadow is going to fall on the left hand side. And so for all the berries, I'll make them a little darker on the left, and I'll usually put a highlight on the right. But that comes at the end of the process, so I'll call it out when we get there. For now, I am using very dark versions of the red and blue colors to add the syrupy component of the pie filling. Just going around the exterior of the visible cherries. So at this point, I am pretty good with the watercolor part of the illustration, but I want to touch it up and add a little more dimension to my berries and my pie crust, and I'm going to do that with colored pencil. So I'm going to start by lightening the right hand side of those cherries, and then I'm going to use a yellow ochre pencil and like a reddish brown color to add some like over browned spots on the pastry. And then finally, as I mentioned, I am coming back with a white paint pen to do little white highlights on the right side of my blueberries and my cherries. For my lettering this month, I wanted to keep it very simple, and I wanted it to be quick and easy for me to produce on each page. So I just typed out the word July in a couple different sizes so I could use them on different pages, different title sizes. But I am just going to transfer those, as you saw, to the page using pencil, and then I'm painting them in with a black paint pen. For my July title here, I decided to spruce it up a little bit just with a little heart over the J, and I'm adding 3 different colors of red plus a white highlight to that to make the heart a little more dimensional, make it look kind of like it's puffy. And then finally, just to fill in the space, I am writing out a very simple grid calendar for the month, and that's going to do it for my cover page. I liked how bold and contrasting the black and the white pages were with the red, white, and blue illustration, so I was really happy with it. Okay, next up, I have got my calendar spread going here, and I am painting in a pair of cherry slushes. So these are like semi-frozen drinks. They're slushes. And I'm going to have a little background of cherries scattered and a couple little mint leaves in here to make them look fancy. And I'm starting again with just base layers, and then I'm going to let those layers dry and then go back and add darker layers for additional depth and detail. One thing that's like kind of funny to me, it was an accident. I didn't plan it this way, but my last plan with me, if you guys saw it, was my cherry blossoms theme, and for some reason it didn't occur to me until I was well into the theme that I went from cherry blossoms to cherries, from one month to the next. So I guess I just have it on the brain. I don't know. But I still really liked it. And it's funny, they're in two different journals because this is July, so it's a new journal for me. I've started a notebook that's going to carry me from July through December of this year for bullet journaling. So this is the first of my monthly setups in the new journal. And I have used watercolor several times in the past in my monthly setups for my bullet journal, but I've never used so much watercolor as I did painting directly into the notebook, directly on my bullet journal pages, as I did this month. And I think I've finally gotten comfortable with how to reduce the buckling of the paper that comes with any kind of water damage that it gets from being painted on. So I have been able to improve that by adding less water than I normally would to the watercolor mixes for the colors. And I'm using a much more concentrated paint mix than I would if I was using watercolor paper. And I've finally gotten comfortable with the strength of that paint and like how much to mix up, for this type of dot grid paper. Now, the sad truth though is that watercolor is always going to look prettier on watercolor paper, and it's also much easier to paint on because it allows for blending and it doesn't dry as fast. There's all kinds of advantages to it. So there is a temptation that I have to stray away from my beloved Archer and Olive journals and try a watercolor dot grid notebook by the Reverie brand, and I will link that in the description box if you want to take a look at it. But it's a watercolor journal. Every page is watercolor paper, and that is so exciting because I think that it would elevate any watercolor illustrations I did in that book over and above dot grid paper. But the downside is that I really like to use a lot of different media in my bullet journal setups, and I don't know if I could commit to a whole journal being primarily watercolor, month after month for 6 months, because I do like to mix it up with the different mediums. The other issue I have is that if I wanted to do like a marker theme, I typically use brush markers, like my Tombow markers, for example. And I think that the watercolor paper in the watercolor dot grid would probably fray the brush tips, because watercolor paper has a lot of tooth. So it's kind of rough, and that's not good, of course, for brush tips on brush markers. So that is the reason I'm basically saying that even though I intend to do a lot more watercolor, I'm going to stick with my regular dot grid 160 GSM notebooks from Archer and Olive for at least my upcoming journal for the beginning of 2024 and probably beyond. Just because, it does give me a surface that is totally suitable for watercolor, as you can see from my experience this month. But it is even better because it's smooth enough for my brush markers, and it really gives me just all the options for any media that I want to use in my bullet journal setup. The Archer and Olive is going to be able to handle it. I am an Archer and Olive affiliate, so if you would like to get a 10% discount on your Archer and Olive purchase, you can use my code BrightVioletArts10, which I will also put in the description box. But for now, back to the time lapse. This is my task and habit tracker for the month, and I am going to move on to a spread that I have not included in my monthly setup for quite a long time. This is a currently spread. As the name implies, this is just going to be a list of journaling prompts that are going to ask me what I am doing or what I am into currently. So it's a nice little time capsule, and it's a good way to just take a look at what's happening in my life right now, to examine currently and to remember later. For this bowl of cherries that I'm painting, I want the bowl to appear to be white, and then I'm going to draw a pattern on it. but I'm actually going to paint it gray because nothing's ever really white. When I look closely at anything that's white, it's always some other color, just very, very pale. So I went with kind of a purpley gray to give this a shadowed look, and I think it came out looking pretty realistic. I was really pleasantly surprised with the way that gray captured the look of like a porcelain bowl. I was kind of head over heels for this illustration. I really think it was my favorite one from the whole month. And here I'm just adding a white highlight to be the reflection on the right hand side of the bowl, and then a little white line as like a trim detail at the top of the bowl all the way around. So the gingham pattern that I'm drawing here, I'm using a beautiful color of one of my Tombow markers. This is probably my favorite blue there is. I think it's often referred to as like a French blue, this like bluish purple color. It's almost periwinkle, but like not as pink. I don't know, it's just such a pretty color. And if you're curious, the number on it it's Tombow number 533. And to finish it off, I felt like I needed to put an element of black on this page, and I don't know if it really needed it or not, but my risk that I took here was that I drew a picture frame around my cherry bowl and then gave it a matte black background. So here's how that page looked when it was completed. All right, next spread up is gonna feature a cherry limeade. This is a personal favorite of mine. I love a cherry limeade. It is a weakness, but in summer they are just especially wonderful because they're so colorful and bubbly, and I don't know, they just seem festive. This illustration was really fun, but it had its own set of challenges for me, which is the experience of trying to paint clear glass for the mason jar, and then trying to capture a look of a translucent beverage that I can see through but still holds its pink color. So like over the straws here, I'm putting kind of a glaze of like a very thin peachy pink color over the straws that I've already painted and allowed to dry. And now I'm coming in with some darker like blue grays to give some low lights to the glass. And then I'm going to add some final details with that gray colored pencil. And then my favorite, this is a Sakura Moonlight Jelly Roll gel pen, and it is like a neon yellow color. And it was perfect for making little like wrinkles in the flesh of the lime. It was just the exact perfect color. I was so excited when I found it in my stationery collection. I think that's why I love collecting art supplies and stationery so much, is because I get such a rush when I am creating art and I need some super specific off the wall kind of supply, and then I find that I actually have something like that. It's always a small thrill when I find that I have the right tool for a job, you know. And here is the finished product for the Goals and Intentions spread. And now it is time to start the weeklies. So I borrowed the concept for this layout from Shada Campbell's June 2023 Plan With Me video. I think it was a swan theme, if I recall. Anyway, she had this great spread that allowed for 2 weeks to a spread with a center flap in the middle of the weeklies. And what I'm going to do on that flap is I'm going to illustrate something small for each week, but then underneath it, I'm going to leave room for a to-do list. And I will also stamp out the title of the week, like what week number it is, basically. But the idea is that I could, with only 2 spreads, do the whole month of July and still have room for these sweet little illustrations. Like, I love those little cherry cream sodas there. So I was able to do a few more illustrations and still give myself a task list for each week that just flips out as I glance from one week to another. But it still lets me have all my tasks over a 2-week period visible, and it just was incredibly quick and easy to set up. So thank you, Shada Campbell, for an excellent idea. So here is the final outcome for my weekly spreads covering all 4 weeks of the month. I like it. I'm excited to try it and see how it works for me this month. But I mean, aesthetically, I'm digging it. So I think it should be very satisfying to fill in all these pages with life stuff in the next few weeks. But we are now at the final flip through of the month. So I am hoping that you enjoyed the video. I appreciate you hanging out with me today. If you did enjoy the video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up so that YouTube knows about it. And otherwise, I would encourage you to subscribe if you're not already, if you enjoy videos like this on journaling and specifically illustration. You can find more of my work on Instagram at Bright Violet Arts. Let me know in the comments if you have any feedback or thoughts about the video today, any questions that I can answer. Let me know, and I will do my very best to reply. You can also let me know in the comments if you have any suggestions for upcoming video topics, themes that you might like to see me try in a bullet journal, or perhaps illustrations that you would like me to attempt on camera. So let me know, and I will see you guys again soon.